who has played games at one point or another thought, if I made a game, it would have this, and it would be like that. A select few decide to carry out their plans to create games. Some find jobs in the industry, and others strike out on their own. If this is the path that you're set on, you're in luck today, as we bring another amazing condensed chapter from the GameDev.net book collection, titled How to Ship a Commercial Game Without Quitting Your Day Job. My name is Ryan Wienko, and this is Industry Broadcast. Before diving into today's article, I want to remind our listeners that it is a very condensed version of Chapter 7 in the GameDev.net book collection series, the book being Business and Production, a GameDev.net collection. A reminder to all of our listeners that you can head over to IndustryBroadcast.com and click on the link in today's post for more information about purchasing it. Or you can just scroll through the IB Book Club on the left-hand side of the page. A big thank you to all the boys from GameDev.net, as well as to Raymond Jacobs for authoring today's chapter. How to ship a commercial game without quitting your day job. So you've been dreaming about game development for years now, and perhaps you've picked up some programming, art, and writing skills along the way. You're ready to do something big and maybe acquire some fame and fortune. The first rule of indie game development is that it is difficult. Very often you have low to no budgets, and most of the work is done by one or two people in their spare time. Unless you're independently wealthy, you're going to need a day job. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it pays the bills and gives you enough time to work on your game. But before you start slinging code and drawing pretty pictures, you need to take a higher level look at the business aspect of your game if you ever hope to sell it. Financial target. When deciding your financial target, you need to decide what type of typical business model your game will follow. Let's look at one of those, the retail model. The heavyweight of the games industry, retail games, sold either online or in stores, are commercial items and typically sport demos to allow players to try before they buy. Typical prices per unit usually range from $9.95 to $59.95, depending on the title and its prestige. As an indie, you'll likely be in the $9.95 to $29.95 range, as it seems to be what the current market tends to bear. Retail games, like everything else, have their pros and cons. The pros are that they give the psychological feeling of prestige. If a company is asking money for a product, then subconsciously the product is worth money and therefore has implied value. They provide potentially large amounts of direct revenue, assuming you manage to sell enough copies, and are typically mode of PC game sales. People are generally comfortable with purchasing a computer game off of a shelf. The downsides are that people expect retail games to be similar to AAA quality games, so you may find yourself up against stiff competition and unable to get shelf space. The additional overhead of selling a retail game and associated advertising and support can be daunting for a first-time indie. Financial needs. The needs of an indie can vary widely. Some can get by on a case of soda and a pack of gum, and others will need a massive loan. What you need, and if you're able or willing to get it, can determine a lot about your project. Quality of life. Developing an indie game will put an additional strain on your personal and professional life. Your project will likely demand a large amount of your free time. Less free time for yourself and loved ones can cause issues. So it's important that you and your loved ones understand this up front. If you have a significant other, wife, husband, and or children, your free time with them is likely to be reduced. It is important to pre-arrange what is acceptable so that your great indie game project doesn't end up ruining your personal relationships. For yourself, understand that you will need to make your project a priority. As with most things, if you do not focus on your game, it will not get done. Intense personal discipline is required for completing a game project, especially if you're a lone wolf. If every time you sit down to work on your game and then promptly decide to go to the movies instead or hang out with friends, chances are you don't have enough self-discipline. You should weigh your own internal motivation level when it comes to getting work done. For most of us, we are sometimes very motivated, and most other times not very motivated. You should try to capture times of extreme motivation and use them to make major progress. Use times of low motivation to spend with family and friends. Just as with people, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and giving your project a day or two or even a week of rest can help remotivate you and give you some added perspective on the project. Beginning your first title. So you've decided on a financial target, settled on a team structure, and weighed the financial and personal sacrifices. You're ready to begin your first indie title. Now it's time to get creative and smart. You're going to do some things wrong the first time around, but experience is the best teacher. Design. You've got a basic game idea, and you think there are enough of a market to meet your financial targets. It's time to get down to the details. The first rule of designing a game is this: if it's not in the design document, it's not in the game. What this means is that game projects are usually too large to be left to winging it, and, we'll figure out later, doesn't usually fly either. If you can't design it on paper, you certainly can't develop it. Design is cheap and uses high-level ideas, paper and pencils, or digital documents. Make your mistakes now, when it's a lot less costly to fix them. Let's explore some guidelines for designing a game. First, start somewhere. Even if it's an incomplete idea, write it down. It's easier to refine something than to think of a complete idea from nothing. Be realistic. If you don't know how to do complex high dynamic rendering or are unable to make significant graphics for 40 character races, then be realistic and don't make it part of the design. Keep it small. Any project you dream of is likely to take twice as long as you anticipate. A well-done small game is far better than a large unfinished game. Keep it small and get it done. Think it out. Game ideas tend to have well-defined beginnings, well-defined ends, and an obscure middle. Take the time to develop that 10 hours of gameplay that you've been quoting so it doesn't sneak up on you later. Make it fun. Fun is subjective and genre-specific. No one likes a boring game. People play games to experience things and enjoy themselves, so know your target market and deliver to that. Marketing. Starting early on marketing is important. You need to make people aware of your project if you ever hope to sell it. Using your website to feed scraps of content and information is a good way to keep people wanting more. Always be sure to use at least 1 or 2 images per paragraph of text. Humans are visual creatures. Do your best to keep the text amount low so that people are more likely to read it. Now is a good time to form relationships on forums. The relationships you form now become your first round of sales later. A key thing to remember is that news sites love news, and they are always looking for new content. Be sure to send press releases, usually a blurb of text with links to images or videos of content, to big gaming sites. These sites feed off one another, so news of your game will soon be spread all over the internet, and that's what you want. You've got a plan and a team, and you're ready to start full-on development. This is your long march to the sea, where your planning and dedication will determine if you're going to make it. Tooling up. Based on your needs and the needs of your team, you may need to purchase software licenses. At the very least, you will need to have a stable infrastructure for communication between your team and yourself. From the programming side, depending on the skills of your team and your game design, you will need to decide on whether to purchase an existing game engine, use a freeware engine, or roll your own engine or framework together. There are various benefits and drawbacks in different engine strategies. Purchasing an existing game engine can be a large upfront cost, but it can also help to ensure your success. Be sure that there is well-written documentation and a strong development community, so that you have somewhere to turn for answers. The same criteria applies to freeware engines. As for rolling your own engine and framework, a word of wisdom. Depending on your chosen game genre, writing your own game engine can be a project into itself. You can literally spend years on an engine before you get into serious game development, and years in the games industry might as well be decades. However, if you have a strong technical lead on your team, writing your own engine can be extremely rewarding if done properly. It can set your game apart from others and incorporate new and innovative features that might not be available in other boilerplate engines. Staying motivated. As an indie, motivation is key. If you're not motivated, you're not going to work on your game, plain and simple. In addition to this, know that no one is motivated 100% of the time. Burnout happens, and when it does, it's the developer who realizes it, manages it, and doesn't give up who finishes the game. Keeping yourself and your team members, if you have any, motivated is a big job, and it's essential. Here are some tips. When you're not feeling motivated, talk with your teammates about good work you've done so far. If you and your teammates are within relatively close physical distance, invite them over for a dinner or a party for milestones to add more of a human element to development. Reward excellent work with gift cards and certificates. Make lists and set milestones. I can quit for the day if I just finish 4 tasks. Play games that help motivate you to develop indie games in the first place. Listen to motivational music to get you pumped and ready to develop. If you're just plain burnt out, give yourself and your developers a couple of days or a week to relax. Chances are the game will be pulling you back before you know it. And that wraps it up for this condensed chapter from the GameDev.net book collection, the book, of course, being Business and Production, a GameDev.net collection. Another big thank you to the crew over at GameDev.net for putting this amazing series of books together, as well as Raymond Jacobs for writing today's chapter. A reminder to all of our listeners that you can head over to IndustryBroadcast.com and check out the Ivy Book Club on the left-hand side for this book as well as all of the others in the GameDev.net series. My name is Ryan Wienko, as always signing off from IndustryBroadcast.com, hopefully bringing the collective insight of the gaming industry to your ears.